Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to TecSocial. Come on in, Todd. I'm glad you could join us. Glad you could join us tonight. Tonight is episode 134 of TecSocial. Season 11, and we're going to close the season this year, or the fall season, I guess. This will be our what the big shows do now. It's their mid-season finale. Yeah. So this is our mid-season finale.
Don't kill anyone off, please.
I'm going to leave them. So it's just a discussion tonight on podcasts, and as soon as we started to post the topic for tonight, we actually started getting people sharing things through social media on some of their favorites. So if you're watching the broadcast tonight and you want to share some of your broadcasts, please do so. Twitter is @TecSocialCB. Feel free to share away. And so tonight is what's your favorite podcast? So who would like to get us started? Anybody have anything that they want to share and why you like it? Why should you listen?
Oh my God, that's a rhetorical question for me. I think they're all my favorites, but I'll give. I listen to approximately 30 podcasts. I'm subscribed to, so I have a huge blend of everything. Maybe I'll give 3 that might appeal to the crowd in here. One of them that I listen to for coders is called Front End Happy Hour. So it's a pretty cool concept, and it's about 30 to 45 minutes roughly. And it's run by a front-end developer who is he's a senior engineer at Netflix, and typically has a lot of engineers from like Netflix and Evernote and similar companies to that on the podcast. And they pick a topic that's front-end. Everybody has a little bit of expertise in it. They chat about it. But the cool thing about the podcast is it's in a bar afterwards, and for the podcast, they'll agree on a word. And whenever that word is said, everybody has to take a drink. So, for instance, if you had, if they were talking about UI, if they used the word experience, something like that, every time they did it, they'd all clink glasses and take a drink. That's cool. Another one I like for anyone who's more on the startup side of things is called Startup. It's done by a company called Gimlet Media. I don't know if you've heard of them or not. They have a super duper popular podcast where they're called Serial. I don't know, it's still super popular. It was on a serial killer. But anyways, Startup is about startups, more or less. It had the ultimate meta first season to it, where the person running it actually was starting his own startup, which became the podcast company of the time. So they're in, I think, 6 seasons of it now, and each season has a slightly different format, or tends to. They were spotlighting businesses with each season, but they changed it up about halfway through as well to go with a cover a company over 1 or 2 episodes. Companies that either made major pivots and became successful, or didn't make major pivots and failed, or maybe made major pivots and also failed, things like that. One of the cool stories from it that I didn't know was all of the backstory behind GrooveShark. I don't know if anybody has used GrooveShark before. It was a music sharing platform. It was one of the free music sharing platforms that had a massive library, but very cool story behind it.
So what was the first one you mentioned again?
The first one that I mentioned was Front End Happy Hour. If you heard from Brian Best, you may have suggested.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, has anybody else heard either of those podcasts Rob mentioned?
Startup one, but not.
Yeah.
I never heard of the other one.
Yeah.
Told me about it, and I like.
It's a niche crowd.
The startup one from Gimlet's really good though. Like the first season that you were talking about, they're just recording themselves talking him and this person, their co-founder, they're just recording themselves talk about getting this podcasting company off the ground, and you hear what are believed to be, and I think are authentic conversations between the founders and also the founders and their partner or their spouses or their partners, and it's quite interesting to hear.
They follow the man who started American Apparel in one season, and they document his rise and fall within the company and his trying to become a phoenix rising out of the ashes and starting a new clothing and apparel company. So that's quite entertaining, to say the least. Yeah.
What are some of the other ones? And a couple of tweets already.
Like Matt just tweeted that out.
Masters of Scale with Reid Hoffman, person who founded PayPal, big investor in LinkedIn. I just started listening to that one not that long ago. Anyone familiar with the startup of the podcast How I Built This?
Mm-hmm.
So they interview like a 40-minute interview with someone who's an entrepreneur, started a business. They find out how they did it. This is kind of the same format, except Reid Hoffman, the guy from How I Built This is a journalist or an interviewer by trade. Reid Hoffman's an entrepreneur, so he really dives into what they were thinking and what they're thinking now. I'm only 3 or 4 episodes in. There's a really good one. He did an interview with the people who started Slack, the chat application. I recommend listening to that one. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Great. What else? What else do you have?
I read the whole library right there.
A couple of them. We have one online. I know we were just chatting about this before we started, but Terry O'Reilly's.
Oh yeah, Under the Influence.
Under the Influence.
Yeah, that was nice.
I listened to that one too.
Do you find it hard to get the episodes though?
I actually have only listened to it on the radio, so I haven't done the podcast thing. But have you listened to the podcast, Todd, or
Oh, yeah.
just radio?
Yeah, they're just on the website, but I think they have a lot of restrictions on copyright because of the ad material that they repost, so
Yeah.
sometimes things get pulled down.
Yeah, sometimes might only be like a 3-minute clip of it, or
Yeah.
But the show's good.
Yeah, it show's awesome.
Yeah.
Why do you like it? What makes it appealing?
Oh, I started listening to it when it was O'Reilly on advertising, which was 10 years ago. Changed names twice, and I don't know why it's gone through a couple of versions, but the first year was a lot more historical, so there was a lot of cultural context from decades past, which is really quite interesting. I mean, this episode, the last number of years, are more topical and more recent, but just as interesting.
So I enjoy it. It's a backstory.
Yeah, it's a cultural.
The story behind the story, how he digs into, as you say,
the cultural touch point stuff. Yeah.
A couple there was somebody had mentioned they had a long list, and the top 3 that she sent us were Reply All, This American Life, and Heavyweight. Anybody? But she didn't say why or what they were about. So does anybody have any experience with any of those?
I know Reply All is a Gimlet podcast as well. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. What's a gimlet?
Gimlet's one of the media companies that releases podcasts. So there's one podcast network. So series.
Okay.
Yeah, what exactly is a podcast? Where does the broadcast leave off, and with all the good stuff that appears to be out there, how do you find a podcast index?
Great question. Great question. Does anybody want to tackle what is a podcast and how do you index them? Where do you find them?
I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that.
It's so it's basically it's an on-demand audio file you can download. So it's there's a bunch of different ways you can get podcasts. Typically, there's a provider you can download on your computer, your phone. They are free, so there's no cost for them, obviously. But iTunes is a big one for your iPhone. I use one for my Android called Podcast Addict. It all just depends on the feature set you want. With Android, it's really kind of choose what you want, but it seems iTunes is the de facto for getting it. So podcasts are typically 30 minutes to about 3 hours in length, depending on the podcast. And there's directories for searching through it, similar to music library, network.
Would it be fair to call it the equivalent to a YouTube, long-run YouTube with no video?
Yes and no, because with podcasts you can subscribe to them, and that's how people normally consume them. So instead of, say, with YouTube where you're one-off clicking on videos to watch, if you were, say, subscribed to a channel and you're automatically receiving the updates coming in, it'd be more similar to that. Yeah.
I describe it as YouTube, because you can subscribe to YouTube channel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, similar to that there.
And would there be a differentiation from CBC Radio, for example? There's a lot of, like, Terry O'Reilly, they do a lot of their episodes, they just make them available on the CBC archives.
Yep.
Just a different mode of distribution?
It's, just a different way of consuming it. So one of the entertainment podcasts that I listen to as well, got me started on podcasting, actually was listening to Joe Rogan's podcasts, because he just has such a smorgasbord of different people that he gets, and just everything from like PhDs to comedians to MMA fighters. But he has his podcast, but at the same time he has a YouTube channel, so you can either consume his episodes via YouTube with video, or you can consume them as a standard podcast. As a standard podcast. So yeah, so it's another method of getting audio.
I think with podcasts too, like, there's a lot of genres. So you can have something like Serial, which is more like an audio book. But how I would classify it, it's like basically like a story that's being told over a series of episodes. Then you can have like a lot of media entertainment stuff, like we're talking about tonight. And then some people use it as like a sales method, and they try and like do a lot of like self-help or like marketing advice and stuff. So those are sort of like three categories that I can think of off my head, which like you don't necessarily have in like other media as much.
Mike Rowe has a really good one if you just want something quick, like 7 to 10 minutes, and it's called The Way I Heard It. There used to be a guy on the radio a long time ago who used to tell stories. Oh, that's the rest of the story. The rest of the story. What's his name? I can't remember. Anyway, he tells a story, and it's a really interesting story, but you don't know really who it's about until the very end. And typically, it's about a very high-profile person or someone who worked in a high-profile position. One example is a story about where Play-Doh came from, how it derived. So the whole story was about this entrepreneur who created this wallpaper cleaner back in the 1920s to try and get all the coal soot off of wallpaper. And this company almost tanked when waxed wallpaper came on because you could wash it with a cloth. And so they had all of this raw material of this rolling wall cleaner, and they found a way. The son's wife or somebody was a school teacher and was like, my kids would love to like mold things with this. So they took the toxins out, put food coloring in it, and turned it into Play-Doh. Yeah, it was really interesting. So stories like that are kind of cool.
Well, I thought you were talking about philosopher.
Play-Doh. Play-Doh.
Play-Doh?
I was like, where's Play-Doh?
Play-Doh?
Greece.
Play-Doh. I walked through a
That's
process.
the paper accent?
Yeah.
Play-Doh.
It was me. I walked in halfway, so I didn't know what he was talking
You work for it.
One that I listen to on occasion when I come to Northwest Arkansas is Startup Junkies.
Oh, yeah.
From Todd, you've been on that. You've been featured on that podcast a few times, just twice.
Oh, 3 times.
You want to talk a bit about what our friends at Van Ryan
Yeah, well, I've got the Perfect Facebook podcast. And as Jeff Amrine, who has worked in it, I think a lot of you have met him, he just does this podcast where he gets orange beer served in the morning, gets 4 or 5 people in,
And he just talks about ecosystem and startups and lessons, and he just has a very friendly, engaging style. I've done a couple. One was actually, we had loads of people from this ecosystem. We had Dan McDonald, Ginny McRae, Steve Nicole, Colin Deacon, Sandra, myself, and we were just talking about comparing the ecosystem in Atlantic Canada with the ecosystem startup in Arkansas. It was a really fun, entertaining thing. We talked about all kinds of stuff, sales. It's a good podcast. It's actually a very good podcast. Startup Junkie.
Is the rumor true that one of those episodes was indeed recorded in this building?
Yes.
Two of those episodes were. One episode was recorded here, and one episode was recorded in the brewery. Do you remember during Super August?
Oh, at Brent Brewing. No, I meant in the building itself.
No. One episode was at CBU during Super August, and another one was at the brewery. That's the one.
Okay. There was one for
Yeah, I
that.
thought you were up at Navigate doing one.
That's
Yeah.
3 here and 1 down there, so there's been 4.
I listen to those podcasts actually, and fun fact, I've heard Vern got in Bob both talk at 1.5 speed. I listen to my podcast at 1.5 speed, so.
Oh, I thought you said 5 speed.
No, 1.5.
Whoa. The chipmunk podcast.
Oh, that'd be funny.
It's more motivated Bob and Vern got.
There's actually a really good podcast. I think it might be on How I Built This about the chipmunks and how that whole thing started. It was really good. You should check it out. But Holly mentioned about some companies using it as a way to just help with marketing ideas as a way to attract clients. There's one on there that I listen to called Smart Pizza Marketing, but it's not just for restaurants. It's really cross industry. It's really good. It gives you not just ideas on how to market, but resources on how to actually implement them, and things like here's a 12-week schedule of an email campaign on how to whether it's your business or a client of yours that you're working with. It's pretty good for marketing resources.
What are some of your favorites, Holly?
Well, yeah, How I Built This is one of my favorites. Also, like, Note to Self. So that's a lot about, like, cybersecurity and, like, using and, like, how your phone and your computer are watching you. Stuff like that. And sort of, like, cyber health, I guess. So, like, cleaning up your, like, email and, like, all those sort of things. And it's usually around like 20 to 30 minutes, so it's like pretty short. What else do I have on here? Like pretty much anything that CBC does, I listen to it in podcast form. Why we eat what we eat, totally not tech related, but it's all about food and sort of why we eat certain things and traditions. And then another one that's not entirely tech related, but if you're getting into podcasts, I find it's a good one. I've gotten a couple people hooked this way. It's called Modern Love, and it's by the New York Times. And so people, the New York Times has a section in their paper called Modern Love, and people send in little stories. It could be about love and loss. And then in their podcast, they have celebrities read the stories and then talk about why they chose that story to read. And then the author comes on and talks about how their life is now. Usually it's like 3 to 5 years since they published. So that's kind of a good one. It's usually like 20 minutes long. So a little soundbite if you're like trying to get through email or something, just plug into that. And it's great for right. So yeah.
Anybody else have anything they want to throw in the mix?
I'll be honest, it's a great podcast.
Yeah.
I went to like, but after one, 2 episodes, it's, we want to be a different channel and this is a different one. And certain colleagues, the thing that kept me interested was on I mean, I'm interested to listen to the song, there's just so many to pick from.
Yeah.
It would be something another way. People really conversate about time. I've been hard to find someone that had some value
I've heard that from several people actually. Sometimes there's real paralysis by like just amount of choice, right? The podcasts out there. With myself, I found that I stuck with it because I started with just listening to that all the way. I started also with entertainment. I kind of shifted it into more educational from there. So I was always wondering what made people like turn away from it. Is it just like they don't like the medium, or is it they hit the genre first they wanted to listen to? Because I found myself like now I've got things in my list that I would have had no interest in listening to. Like I listen to Freakonomics Radio every week and Planet Money, which are great economics podcasts, and I'm as far from economist as you can get. So.
Well, actually, I'm going to come Yeah, with all of this good stuff that's out there, is there a two-part question? A, is there an index, podcast index? That's question one. Question two is, if not a podcast index, could somebody make a bag of money by making one?
Just about every piece of software is got a searchable index. Yeah, that's kind of built into it.
Yeah.
And the podcasts are actually pulled in from different feeds. So, like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of metadata on podcasts that are in the iTunes, genre to the name, to the author, to keywords, to you name it.
Just a Google one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the Apple device rate podcasts? I don't have mine.
There's a podcast now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can get a
iTunes.
podcast app that actually connect into the iTunes stream or the podcast.
Yeah.
I had an Android and I use.
Yeah, the Android market one I use had like 5-star ratings on the ones that I like.
Mhm.
But even the 5-star rating ones after a couple of
Google Play is a good aggregator. It's good for finding your podcasts and storing them as well, I find. For an Android device, you can't put it on iPhone anymore. But you can use everything on Google Play except the podcast feature on iPhone. So I think that's actually how much better it is.
It all comes down to quality of the production too, right? Like if they got something saying it's interesting, it's a good show. I mean, podcast started as a cheap technology that all of a sudden people could sort of broadcast their own opinions and put them out on people's.
Right.
So it was an alternative to radio because everyone all of a sudden had an MP3 player, an iPod that they were watching and talking, and you could get your point of view, story, voice out without really too much cost. And now, of course, we've got CBC and ABC and all the biggies into it. But originally, it was much like a democratizing technology.
Yeah.
But the quality is, like Terry O'Reilly, the advertising stuff is well produced. There's money gone into it. It's highly entertaining. It's informative. It's one of the better ones out there. And then I'm sure there's some young budding broadcaster in his bedroom that's cranking out episodes as we speak.
I've heard a lot of those types there. They tend to, I don't know what happens, but sometimes you can get one, I don't know if it's because it's new and people download all at once, it spikes really quickly. I've gotten a couple cases like that. I listened to one that was on startups and it was absolutely could not keep pace with the conversation at all. You can barely hear them.
A lot of them make it like a rock and roll album. The band has their entire life to make their first album, and then a year to make the second one, right? So.
And I mean, like, it's almost like if you want to consider it, it's like the Wild West of radio. Like, there's nothing saying you can't swear on podcasts. There's nothing saying you can't have any kind of content you want on podcasts. There's nothing governing you. So.
Well, I mean, that's like it's not governed by radio broadcast.
Well, like, yeah,
by
like
the
broadcast,
FCC. I mean,
like
so it's
FCC or
outside
something
that
like
entire.
that. So
Yeah.
but because of that, there's such an easy barrier to entry as well. You're going to get a lot of.
Yeah. But that's how it started. Was with a couple people with opinions that and turned themselves into probably the first. Before we had YouTube celebrities, we had podcast celebrities, and of course, media has grown since then.
It'd be sort of the equivalent of the CB radio rather than ham radio.
I'm not familiar enough with CB and radios to comment.
They're radio broadcasts. If you listen to any radio station and any kind of talk radio, it's similar. It's just that the cost of doing it is nominal, and there's billions of them out there.
Podcasting is so new that somebody tried to make it a victim of patent trolling. So, for anybody everybody familiar with what patent trolling is?
No.
It's when somebody goes out and gets a bunch of fictitious patents on stuff that hasn't been built yet, with the sheer intention of, if this thing ends up getting built, I can turn around and say, I got a patent on that. You owe me all of this money, or I'm shutting it down. One of the biggest podcasters out there was Adam Carolla, and when somebody like this attempted to extort them of an awful lot of money, and basically try to get every podcast shut down or monetized off of every single podcast. And they ended up failing, I'm pretty sure. I think Adam Carolla more or less made it his crusade to end this person's doing this. So that gives an idea of how new the technology is in itself. It's new enough that someone would think of patenting it in this way.
I don't have an iPhone, I just have a laptop and a desktop. All the podcasts that are available, would they be available to a desktop, or you have to be in the iTunes system?
You can get a desktop version of iTunes and just listen to them. You can download them and listen to them through your desktop. You have to pay for iTunes. So, and on a PC or Mac, either way, yeah, you'd be good to go. Are there any local podcasts anybody listens to?
I know Jamie Foltz had one last year, although I'm not going to produce it anymore. But Jamie Foltz and Rob DeBlanc.
Yes.
Had a podcast, yeah. General topics. Rob DeBlanc is a funny guy, and Jamie's clever himself. And, yeah. So it was whatever topic is going on that week.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
I remember it's two brothers that do it. There's one in Fulton Gaming Center.
Oh, yes, okay.
There's
Warp Whistle?
Warp Whistle, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, they did a great job on it, and I've listened to two of their episodes. I know the guy, so again, certainly would be interesting after this.
Yeah.
But I still promote their podcast and share them on Facebook.
Mark Carey.
Yeah. They do one at CaperCon every year, don't they?
Yes.
I think they do one at
They're
CaperCon.
great guys with Phil. They're very informative with what they do, and I mean, I'm a little bit interested in what they do, but just not completely interested in what they do. But I did a whole episode on the game.
We'll wrap up the podcast conversation, move on to a couple of the upcoming events that we're working on for 2018. In January, we're going to have a marketing workshop. We're just working on the details and the dates right now, but it will be in January. It is, I was speaking with Sandra Goodwin today, who's going to lead this workshop. It's going to be fantastic, and it's going to be marketing from, it's going to really twist your thinking on how to market and grow your business. So make sure you're signed up to our current email newsletter list so that we can get that news out to you. We're also working on project management training, both for software projects as well as just general project management. And the idea is we want to have the project management such that if you want to work towards a PMP designation, this would be useful for you, but it's not this. The workshops that we're working on really they're not going to be PMP stream, but there certainly won't be a waste of time. Skills training, Polly, can you refresh my memory? Polly's been doing a lot of the programming, so.
Yeah, so we're looking at maybe doing another event with Scale. That's still in the works as well. And then in the spring, we're going to have You're Hired, which is going to be an interviewing technique event. And if anyone's been to some of our other events, you might have heard me speak about it. But basically, it's going to be training for interviewers and interviewees. So we're going to do sort of morning workshops, focuses on best practices for hiring and, for job searching and interviewing on both sides of the tables. And then we're going to pair people off and sort of do training that way. We promise no one a job. want a new employee for this event. It's not that sort of job fair event. It's just to improve your skills if you're hiring or if you're looking for a job. So hopefully, when you go out there, you get the best fit. Whether you be a hiring manager or someone looking for a position. So that's coming in the spring, I believe. So yeah, like Bob said, make sure you sign up on our mailing list. That's primarily the best way, I guess, to get the information. So, and you can do that on NovaCorp's website under Acceleration Initiatives.
Acceleration initiatives, momentum, and you'll be able to sign up there, and also for some of the other NovaCorp information as well, like business practice and general news and alerts.
I was getting to SIG. What is that SIG? Just,
I really don't know what that is.
I have no idea what that is. Water
What's that?
wings?
What's that?
Twitter. Okay.
Everybody knows that. The universal sign. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Twitter. Okay, Twitter.
That's kind of embarrassing.
I know. We have confirmed that Twitter's coming back for Pitch Week 2018. We're just working on a date with them now. And it's going to be bigger and better, with lots of excitement. And we're really looking forward to that. Twitter is keen to come back, and we're keen to have them back. So, again, watch for that as well. So the best part of TecSocial, of course, is the social part. So if you want to, we can turn off our broadcast probably, and that'd be great.